Last week, in honor of September 11th, I posted some thoughts on Facebook about heartbrokenness. And about 5 years ago, I was at a writing conference and I heard Parker Palmer talk about the events of September 11th, 2001. And he was trying to make sense of such a horrible trauma and tragedy, the scale of it, how humans could be responsible for something like that. And he said, in an attempt to make sense of it for himself, he said, what is one thing that the terrorists who drove planes into buildings on September 11th, what's one thing that those terrorists and I have in common? And after he thought about that for a long time, and by the way, I think that's a very courageous question to ask yourself, he said, the thing we have in common is that we're all heartbroken. And I've thought about that for these last 5 years. And every time September 11th comes around, I think about it again, that it's so true that one of our common states in our humanity is that we are all heartbroken about something. And it's different for each of us. And I think the key is what we do in that place of heartbrokenness. And what I'm finding in my own life is that it's very counterintuitive. We think if I keep the heartbrokenness and the heartbreak and the loss and the pain over here, then I'll have all this breathing room to live out of. And what is the reality is that when we turn toward the truth of what we're dealing with, that is the place that we find breathing room. You know, if we live separated from our loss and our pain and the things we're struggling with, it still shows up, but we're living in denial. And denial is not a spacious place. The other side of it is if we turn toward that heartbreak and that pain and that loss, and it's all we can see, and we don't see our way through it, and it's all we're focused on, that's the opposite of denial. It's despair. There we are living in despair, swirling in that. And I don't think that's a place of breathing room either. And so for me, what I've seen is we turn toward that pain, that heartbreak, that loss. We acknowledge that it's there, and then we realize that God's reaching his hand down to us in that place. And we allow ourselves to be saved. And we turn toward him and we take his hand with the slightest desire to get well. I think that is where we find some breathing room.